Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. My namaste to everyone. I hope I am audible well.
Yes, sir, you are.
Thank you so much, Ratnakar ji. Dr. Ratnakar has been a good friend and a brother. And Dr. Ratnakar, once you uh, declare that we are brothers, then I don't think that anything else was needed. Uh, we are together uh, as an as a colleague or as academicians. It is our duty to be together, to stand together, mainly in the times when academics has taken a big hit because of the closure of the institutions. Because as teachers, I think we feel a constant itch to be in contact with our colleagues, our students, our research scholars, because face-to-face teaching and face-to-face discussions cannot be replaced by what we are doing on the name of these online events. Uh, I think and I genuinely think that maybe in the times to come, this may become a standard, and face-to-face meeting and face-to-face classes may become, a spatial activity, because you don't know when things become other things go other way. To understand it, I would like to give an example that there was a time when, simple dal roti was our staple diet, and all these fried things and all were things of occasion. Now you see, when you go to good, marriages that are very nicely arranged and elaborate arrangements have been done. There I find that they make a special arrangement for simple dal and roti and good, and that is supposed to be a special corner somewhere. So a thing which was staple at one time has become a speciality now. Similarly, probably this face-to-face reading, face-to-face teaching, face-to-face discussions are going to become the events of some special occasions in times to come. And this is now is going to become a norm, as it has been for over 1 year now. Everything has a meaning, and this is the meaning I extract out of it, out of the situation. Because today's talk, I have tried to structure around this language and its meaning, how language makes meaning. Uh, I'm a person of language and literature, so uh, I'm not very good at making PPTs and then presenting with PPTs as so wonderfully done by Dr. Bhavna. I would like to learn from you more, madam. So the thing is, I've not made PPTs. It's not an excuse. I have not made, because I find that face-to-face talking will be more fruitful, and I will be rather easier in doing so. It's not that कि बुड्ढा हो गया हूँ, but thing is, I have been into this practice now for almost 25 years now. So I choose to retain it more and more. So, as I told Ratnakarji in the beginning, that my talk will be centered around self, language, and meaning, understanding Acharya Bhartrihari and Jacques Lacan management disciplines. Jacques Lacan was a psychoanalyst mainly, and a philosopher and psychologist. So he had got less to do with language than with that. So I think he was a linguistic, maybe occasionally, but I think he was a whole-time philosopher and psychologist. But he finds mention in my talk as I teach Indian aesthetics. In that, I'm fan of Acharya Bhartrihari, who was one of the earliest linguistics and language scholars of the world. He was the first structuralist of the world. He was the first post-structuralist of the world. And as I mentioned earlier, he was one of the earliest philosophers of this world. Bhartrihari talks about language in terms of philosophy. As it has been a tradition in India that most of the schools of philosophy have tried to understand the world and the ongoings of the world and the creations of the world in terms of language. कैसे ये world अपने existence में आया? Even Acharya Bhartrihari has tried to explain it in terms of language, where he says that Anadi Nidhanam Brahma Shabda Tattvam Yadaksharam Vivartate Arth Bhavena Prakriya Jagato Yata. अनादि निधनम, जिसका कोई आदि नहीं, जिसका कोई अंत नहीं. But it does not mean कि उसका कोई आदि या अंत नहीं है. Only thing is we do not know when it started and we do not know when to what point it will go. अनादि निधनम ब्रह्म शब्द तत्वम यदक्षरम. ये जो शब्द तत्व है या ये जो वाक है, ये जो शब्द here means language. यद अक्षरम, यत अक्षरम, जो के अक्षर है. अक्षर का मतलब क ख ग नहीं, जिसका क्षरण नहीं हो सकता. It is not subject to any kind of decay. अनादि निद्रम ब्रह्म शब्द तत्वम यदक्षरम विवर्तते अर्थ भावेन, जो अर्थ रूप में विवर्त होता है. In the form of meaning, it gets transformed as this world. विवर्तते अर्थ भावेन प्रक्रिया जगतो यतः. यतः इस जग की प्रक्रिया चलती है. ये जो जग है ये माया रूप में उस शब्द रूपी ब्रह्म का अर्थ है. So Acharya Bhartrihari, in a way, as I tell you the source of this shlok, this is the first shlok of Vakyapadyam. Vakyapadyam means words in a sentence. Vakya or pad, words in a sentence. So Vakyapadyam जो उनका ग्रंथ है उसका सबसे पहला श्लोक है, where he tries to explain the creation of this world through language. उन्होंने लैंग्वेज को ब्रह्म माना है. यहाँ पर ब्रह्म का मतलब हम इसको थोड़ा सा रिलीजन से हटके भी समझ सकते हैं. ब्रह्म डज नॉट नेसेसरली मीन सम काइंड ऑफ गॉड. कोई भी एक बड़ी चीज, ओवरवेलमिंग चीज, उसको हम एक यानी कि उत्कृष्ट चीज, जहां पर यानी कि आई थिंक इन ए बेस्ट फॉर्म, दैट कैन बी अंडरस्टूड एज ब्रह्म. जैसे कि आप इंडियन एस्थेटिक्स में जो रस है, रस और भाव जो हम कहते हैं, रस को भी ब्रह्म सहोदर कहा है. सहोदर मीन्स माँ जाया भाई. तो उस वहां पर रस को ब्रह्म सहोदर कहा है, यहां पर शब्द को ब्रह्म का रूप कहा है. एनीवे, लिंग्विस्टिक्स के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से इसमें एक चीज इंपॉर्टेंट है, दैट विच कम्स आउट वेरी प्रोमिनेंटली फ्रॉम दिस श्लोक इज दैट अर्थ, शब्द एंड इट्स अर्थ, word and its meaning go hand in hand simultaneously. There is a direct relation between a word and its meaning. What structuralists say? Structuralist, when we say structuralist, those who come from language background and that is from English linguistics, they would understand mainly it is Ferdinand Saussure who is supposed to be the father of structuralist, but because of this ignorance of ours that we do not know. See, really, it's a very disparagable fact in India that so shamelessly in all English departments and other linguistics departments, we say that Ferdinand Saussure was the father of structuralism. Actually, it was Bhartrihari who was the first structuralist, somewhere I think 3rd, 4th century. So anyway, after that, after Bhartrihari, we come to Ferdinand Saussure. Ferdinand Saussure says again that there is a direct relationship between sign, between a signifier and signified. Let me refer to the process of signification, where there is a signifier and there is a signified. The combination of them actually is sign. And the interaction between signifier and signifier leads to the process of signification, that is the process of meaning making. And all meaningful things, technically speaking, all the epistemological or epistemic categories come together and try to make some meaningful structures, bigger meaningful structures. And these meaningful structures, again, they come together in hierarchical relations, of course, and they result into some kind of bigger structures, and then so on and so forth. This is what structuralism says, that there is a sign, there is a signifier, and there is a signified. A signifier directly leads to signified. And this process of signification in which a meaning is obtained, that meaning is concretely obtained finally, obtained in unconscious. But Jacques Lacan, he goes, I mean, he takes off from the grounds that was prepared by Saussure. He takes off from that ground, and now he goes further, and he says that this final signification is not obtained, in fact, as Bhartrihari, Saussure says. He says that there is a signifier, and it leads to not a signified, but to another signifier, and that leads to another signifier. So this signified gets constantly rolled under this process of signifier, incessantly. So what happens? What happens to the signification? Yes, he says that final meaning is resolved, but it resolves somewhere in the unconscious, and it resolves somewhere in unreal, because real is not obtainable as per Jacques Lacan, because Jacques Lacan is finally a psychologist, and he tries to understand the human thinking, human understanding. So while thinking about, or while trying to understand the human understanding, Dr. Ratnakar, kindly keep me aware of the time left with me. I don't want to be going on, incidentally. Yeah. So thing is, with this background, I would like to throw some light on Jacques Lacan, how Jacques Lacan as a post-structuralist think of all this. I named a term unreal and real. So thing is, as a psychologist, what does a psychologist do? A psychologist try to understand the ongoings of mind. हमारी जो मेंटल, जो हमारी मनस्थिति है, जो मानसिक क्रियाएं हैं, उनको समझने की कोशिश करते हैं साइकोलॉजिस्ट. Sigmund Freud did this. Sigmund Freud tried to understand our psyche, and he postulated 3 kinds of psychic fields where he talks about id, ego, and superego. He says that a person is born with animal nature, with desires, pleasure principles, that is it. And then there is ego. Ego is a reality principle where he tries to understand and where he knows what is doable, what is viable. And then there is superego. And his superego, he tries to postulate, our understanding this way, that there is a moral guard. What is that? That is the world around us, which later I will tell Jacques Lacan, as he calls it, symbolic order. This symbolic order, or the world around us, determines, and he makes certain rules and regulations, Sometimes they are self-imposed and sometimes they are forcefully imposed by the things around us. So the problem is, uh, this is how he postulated the human mind and human psyche. Jacques Lacan thought it in a different way. Again, he talks about actually three orders. I mean, Jacques Lacan is talking about certain terms, that is subjectivity, subjectivization. Then he talks about desires. Then he talks about imaginary. He talks about gaze and several things. Uh, as He prominently talks about one word, that is subject. Subject is not as the subject is in Freudian sense. In Lacan says subject is subjectivity is what makes you what you are. A subject who desires, he constantly desires. A subject who keeps desiring. हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले. If one desire is fulfilled, it transforms itself into another one. But the basic concept of desire always remains. The conceptual desire, it always remains and it never leaves you. So, I mean, when we talk of subjectivity from the religious point of view, when we talk of subjectivities, subjectivity क्या? हमारी खुदी. वो सुना है ना, आई थिंक अलामा इकबाल ने लिखा था, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना, क्या तदबीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से पूछे तेरी रजा क्या है. सो वो खुदी क्या है? वो खुदी यही तो है, वो सेल्फ, वो सब्जेक्टिविटी. तो फ्रॉम वो रूहानी पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, फ्रॉम रिलीजन पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, दैट सब्जेक्टिविटी इज दैट सोल, हमारी आत्मा जो है. बट वी आर नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट anything religious here. So let's think of it from a philosophical point of view. So in philosophical point of view, subjectivity is formed in your unconscious. It is formed in your mind, in your brain, and it is affected by a particular locus, a particular focus. I mean, and your interaction with the world. So your subjectivity is always subject to the kind of interaction you have with your world. There is another psychological term that we say phenomenal field. That as per our phenomenal field, our desires are formed. As per our phenomenal field, our subjectivity is formed, our self is formed. And it is according to this we understand the world around us. So we are subject to that desires, things, ranging from our basic needs to higher level needs. I would like to make a mention of Abraham Maslow's idea of hierarchy of needs, where Abraham Maslow says that our needs start from the basic biological needs to the highest level of needs of self-actualization. So subjectivity is made of desires. If I make a brief mention of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of need, there he starts from the basic biological needs, and then he talks about safety needs. And when basic biological needs and safety needs are fulfilled, then we go to the needs of belongingness or intimacy. And when even that need is fulfilled, then we talk of esteem, respect, dignity. And when we achieve a certain level of respect and dignity in the society or in our environment, then only we can think of self-actualization. So, but you cannot fulfill the needs and desires from inside. There is a logic. We cannot fulfill our needs from inside. हमारे अंदर कोई ऐसा कोई source नहीं है. We have no resource to fulfill our needs. So, since you are a subject, you can never be able to fulfill your needs with your own agency, since we do not have any such agency that we can fulfill our needs. Why? What are our desires? We need a car, we need a job, we need a house, we need a secure future, we need promotions, and we need certain relationships, we need certain types of life partners or whatever kind of partners and all that. So desires are in us, but they always point out towards outside. So that is the fun. Desire is something that resides inside, but it always points to something outside, which is always there. So what happens? So in this is the subject. This is the world, and this is the world which is the resource to fulfillment of the desires. And our desire one, desire two, desire three, desire four are there in this world. So what happens? Unless your desires are fulfilled, you cannot be yourself. You cannot be your true self. So, as I make a mention that Mirza Ghalib said that हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले. And second line is really important to refer to Lacan, where he says that बहुत निकले मेरे अरमा पर फिर भी कम निकले. As Lacan says that desires, however, and how many desires are fulfilled, but still there are more and more. Desires can never, it can never be fulfilled. As second chapter of Shrimad Bhagvadgeeta, it talks in the shlok 54, 55, 59, 62, and 63. You must have read Vishyan Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavarjam Raso Apyasya Param Drashtva Nivartate. हमारे अंदर की जो डिजायर, जो विषय हैं, एक तो वासनाएं होती हैं और एक विषय होते हैं. तो उन वासनाओं के विषय बाहर हैं, वासनाएं हमारी अंदर हैं. जो लाका कह रहे हैं वो हजारों साल पहले श्रीमद् भगवद गीता में श्री कृष्ण कह चुके हैं. विषय और वासनाएं दो अलग चीज होती हैं. वासनाएं, डिजायर्स हमारे अंदर होती हैं, विषय जो हैं वो हमेशा संसार में बाहर होते हैं. सो वासनाएं सीक्स देयर फुलफिलमेंट इन द विषय विच आर आउटसाइड. भूख एक वासना है, खाना उसका विषय है, जो बाहर मिलेगा आपको, अंदर नहीं. अंदर तो भूख ही भूख है, तो उसका जो भोजन है वो आपको बाहर मिलेगा. दिस इज व्हाट Lacan says, in a theory. So whenever you acquire a thing that you're wanting, or you desire, you shift to a new projection. One desire is fulfilled, then there is another desire. I mean, your mind keeps projecting the desires. So this is how things are. So for Lacan, desires like an object inside you that changes form in fluctuating and mimicking things outside. So, I mean, a person can never attain the wholeness. A person will never be whole according to Lacan. So this is always, I mean, what he says is we all contain, a hole in us. And if somebody asks what is the size of that hole, the size of this hole is the size of the desire you have. So you can phrase it this way, that you have a desire size hole inside you. So if one desire gets fit into this hole, there is another desire comes which creates another hole. So there is always a desire size hole inside. So what is the subject? According to Lacan, a subject is actually, to be a subject is to be constantly imagining yourself more satisfied with something you do not have. Our scriptures keep saying it. कि हम सोचते हैं कि हमें ये मिल जाएगा तो खुश होंगे, वो मिल जाएगा तो खुश होंगे, फिर वो मिल जाएगा तो खुश होंगे. होता कुछ नहीं है. As we understood, जब हम 5th class में थे, we were thinking कि जब हम 10th कर जाएंगे ना, फिर तो हम बड़े हो जाएंगे. फिर हम 10th की तो सोचा 12th में अच्छे मार्क्स आ गए, बढ़िया कोर्स में एडमिशन मिल जाएगा, फिर और बढ़िया हो जाएगा. We got into बढ़िया कोर्स, मान लो, then we got into a desired course. Then again उसमें अगर अब एक बार प्लेसमेंट बढ़िया हो जाए, मजा आ जाएगा. But it never, finally, I mean, it is never fulfilled. Lacan is trying to say the same thing. So when you constantly imagine yourself with the other thing, which is outside, you do not necessarily have a control on yourself or on that thing anymore. So you are stuck in a loop constantly throughout the life. So this loop is technically called neurosis, which keeps the person unhappy. Whatever Lacan is saying, we are not duty bound to believe in all that. Lacan जो कह रहे हैं हमें वो सारा उस पर यकीन करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है. That is why I keep referring कि Lacan कह रहा है, मैं नहीं कह रहा या आप नहीं कह रहे, या आपको जरूरी नहीं है कि इस बात में यकीन करें. आप भगवद गीता में यकीन कर सकते हैं, वो श्री कृष्ण ने उनमें उसका रेजोल्यूशन भी बताया है. But now what he says that desire is the characteristic of a subject which are never complete. वासना जो है वो लोगों के अधूरेपन का एक गुण है. It is an essential element which signifies incompleteness. So desire is always a part of you, but always points outside. So what is not you is a part of you. So desire is something like this. So what do you think when some big celebrity dies? This is an example I think in my mind. ऐसा है अगर कोई बड़ा आदमी मरता है, सुसाइड कर लेता, सुशांत ने सुसाइड कर ली और लोगों ने कर ली, बड़े बड़े लोग कर गए, तो उनके पास क्या नहीं था? Everything was there, but only thing is they wanted to be yourself and they wanted to be themselves, but they could not be themselves ultimately despite achieving so much. So I mean this proves sometimes Lacan right. So they wanted to be themselves and they gave up trying to be themselves. So whether we should try to be ourselves or not, that is the question. So, always they say in advertisements, ye dil mange more. Hota kya hai? That Lacan's idea is subjectivity is you can never be yourself. How a part of you is always absent. It is always somewhere, an elusive part. So there is a societal pressure on you to be fulfilled, to be yourself. So this societal pressure, I mean, this pressure comes from the symbolic order. I'll come to, as I mentioned in the beginning, that like Sigmund Freud, Lacan also tried to understand the order of our psyche. He says there is a real, there is imaginary, and then there is symbolic. Real is what we were in the pre-linguistic stage. जब हम पैदा हुए थे, छोटे बच्चे थे, जब तक हमने लैंग्वेज नहीं सीखी थी, हम रियल थे. Why? Because we were quite in harmony with our biological being. ये वो समय था जब हमें फुलफिलमेंट नहीं चाहिए थे, हम मरे नहीं जा रहे थे फुलफिल होने के लिए. We never wanted to become somebody. We never wanted to become something. एक छोटा बच्चा है, उसने गारा लगा ली या कुछ मिट्टी विट्टी लगा ली, कुछ लगा लिया. बड़े आदमी को लगता है कि वो गंदा हो गया, उसको तो लगता ही नहीं है वो गंदा हो गया, वो तो ठीक है, वो हार्मनी में है चारों तरफ से, मिट्टी के साथ भी हार्मनी में है. So that is why the child is real. Pre-linguistic because he has not acquired language now. More problem is when he comes to the imaginary order. जब पहली बार शीशे में अपनी शक्ल देखता है, when the person looks at his own image, a child looks at his own image in the mirror, and it is not looking at his image in the mirror, it is that kind of wonderment, it is the kind of that aha feeling, oh, it's me. So that actually makes the difference, because वो जब उसको एकदम से उसने अपने रिफ्लेक्शन को देखा तो उसने उसके अंदर सेंस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी पैदा हुई. This was the first time he understood that I have an identity. Before that, he was thinking as himself as an inseparable part of the ambience. Now it is the first time that he comes across self. He makes an idea of I. So this is imaginary, stage. In this, and this stage does not stop just here. The problem is the kind of that ideal I, the kind of I he comes across at this level, and then the inability or limitedness of its own self. क्योंकि वो छोटा बच्चा खड़ा भी नहीं हो सकता भी अपने आप से पूरी तरह से. The child cannot sustain himself, cannot stand himself. लेकिन वो जो देख रहा है, somewhere in unconscious mind, he makes a picture of completeness, that ideal I, and his own inadequacy. This lack, this gap goes with him throughout the life, and it is never complete. Desire to be that big ideal I, and this desire goes throughout the life. And this stage of uh, the stage of imaginary, in fact, it now gives rise to the next stage of symbolic order. This symbolic order is world around us. That is unreal world. Because whatever we are now, we have become this because of this unreal thing, or rather, if I can be excused to use the word unreality around us. So this creates in him that ideal I, imago, that ideal image, that imago. Imago का मतलब होता है ना कि कुछ भगवानों की तरह एक बिल्कुल जैसे मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम की एक इमेज है, वो इमागो है. हमें मर्यादा पुरुषोत्तम होना चाहिए, हमें राम जैसा होना. एक लड़की की इमागो क्रिएट की जा सकती है, और डॉक्टर भावना बात कर रही थी कि समाज में थोड़ा बदलाव के लिए, तो हमने इमेज क्रिएट कर दी कि लड़की को सीता होना चाहिए, सीता ही होना चाहिए. I would like to contest this idea here. द्रौपदी क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए? द्रौपदी क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए? Yeah, please.
In another 5 minutes.
I don't know. It's making an ego. But anyway, okay. I'll try to wind it up. Probably I get the clue. I'm being told that I should wind it up. So thing is, द्रौपदी क्यों नहीं होना चाहिए? Why should a girl not be a द्रौपदी? Why? Because Draupadi threatens us. Draupadi was a self-willed woman. She took decisions. She contested. She revolted. We do not want a woman to be revolting. मुझे मेरी बीवी सीता जैसी चाहिए, द्रौपदी जैसी नहीं चाहिए. मैं क्या करूंगा द्रौपदी का भाई? Because Draupadi does not suit my narrative. द्रौपदी मेरे लाइफ के नैरेटिव को सूट नहीं करती है. I don't want. So this is how we create an ideal I, that imago of Sita, and every girl aspires to be a Sita, or at least every girl is made to aspire to be a Sita, or Gargi, or other women who were goody-goody. So this is how imago is created, and everybody wants to be that and cannot be that. So this lack, what he says that, I mean, this is the signification, how Lacan relates it with the language. You know? So making meaning, what is the signification? I mean, when it comes to symbolic world, in symbolic world, there is a continuous attempt to make meaning. And this, we cannot arrive at a final meaning, in a finality of meaning. As I told you in the beginning, that we start, when we start from a signifier, and minded, Lacan keeps signifier above to the signified. He says that signifier is capital S and signified is small s. So this is what, this is how Lacan understands, you know, the world, the working of our mind and of the language. And finally, he says that as we cannot attain that reality because we have left behind reality and it is not attainable, we are living in unreal now and we cannot attain reality. The final meaning or the fulfillment exists there in reality, which cannot be attained finally. So this is, again, I mean, this is the characteristics of this post, you know, whether it is postmodern or it is a post-structural or whatever kind of post, or a post-truth. And I mean, there is a whole lot of fraud that is being done on the name of post. We can speak on and on and on for for hours. Sometimes I request Ratnakarji to hold someday this kind of discussion where we can discuss post and postness. Now let's come to Bhartrihari and wind it up. So Bhartrihari, how we reconcile Lacan with Bhartrihari. Bhartrihari is again of the same opinion that when he says that as a word is born with its earth, but it does not mean that the earth is definite or the earth is concrete, and it always it is one with that with that shabd. It is not that. What he says always that the meaning or this earth is always subject to subject to the context. What he says that avastha desh kala naam. I think shlok 32 or 33 of Vakyapadiyam, Kand 1, first jo Brahma Kand. He says that देश काल और अवस्था ये तीन चीज मिलकर किसी भी अर्थ को या सिग्निफिकेशन को इम्पैक्ट करते हैं. I mean the final earth is obtainable, but is obtainable depending upon time, place and circumstances. A shabd has to have an earth. Earth is born with the shabd, but always the nature of this earth or what the earth is it always depends upon the inside of the thinker, for which he talks about a term sport, the burst of cognition or the burst of insight that happens in the mind. How it happens in the mind? Because of, see, when mind is a material where there are bhavana, emotions, there are sentiments, there are experiences of life. All these experiences of life and sentiments, ये जो हमारी भावनाएं हैं, they are the fertile ground for a meaning to take place. जिसका जितना और जैसा experience होगा, उसका वैसा ही sport होगा, and a sport which will lead to a kind of meaning, and that meaning is unique to the person who thinks of it. Don't you think this is what was told by post-structuralist, whether it was Jacques Derrida or it was Lacan or it was so the whole thing is it is the post-structuralist or the structuralist or the ancient Indian, I should not use the word ancient, or the Indian thinkers, actually the theorists, because I believe that after 13th or 14th century, not much of the theory came up in India because of the various regions, because of the various historical regions. First, the invasions from the Islamic world, I mean, from the Middle East, and in 16th century, 17th century, the Europeans came, and we were constantly under the onslaught of, I mean, military also and ideological also, that our own theories were suppressed, or at least the theorists did not find fertile grounds to speak up, or even if they were, the works were destroyed and it's not available to us. I think I must rest